So, Mayor Provenzano, the 2015 budget is down, and the levy is less than 2%. Are you satisfied with the direction council took tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the circumstances we did just about as well as we could have done. You can't really tackle these things in any substantive way unless you talk about spending. Taxes are a consequence of spending. So I was happy that council didn't add a significant amount of spending to the budget because, as you're aware, I've been talking about doing a spending review. So we added very little spending to the budget, which was positive, and we really worked hard to keep it down. I think we're probably one of the lowest increases in Northern Ontario, if not the lowest. I haven't done that comparison yet, but we're down there for sure.
One direction that seemed to be the same, though, was you went on reserves a little bit.
Well, 100,000.
Well, explain the 3.5 surplus, I guess is what I mean to say.
Explain. You want me to explain the $3.5 million surplus?
Yeah, if you could.
That surplus was largely due to one-time funding that we're receiving. SR paid off a significant amount of tax and some outstanding interest it was paying on its outstanding taxes. So we had some unexpected monies come into this fiscal year that were outstanding, and that resulted in a surplus. But it wasn't a surplus that resulted from growth in our community. It wasn't a surplus that resulted from growth in our revenue sources. It was a surplus that resulted largely from tax money coming in from previous years.
You had expressed a desire to see the Northern Community Center completed as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean that was
the tone that was brought up tonight.
Well, there was roughly $700,000 of asks for the Northern Community Center, and my point was, look, we had a plan for this center. We scaled it back. That plan is still on the books. So if we're going to do that, we should really look at when we're going to do it and how we're going to do it, and we should spend the money we're going to spend on it in the context of that plan. If the building isn't yet done and we want to do more to the building, I was suggesting we not piecemeal it. And let's take a look, and if we're going to finish the building, let's look at when we can do that and how we can do that, and we'll fit the spending into that process.
So are you disappointed that the $600,000 in asks didn't come out of this meeting tonight?
It did.
Oh, it did?
It did, yeah.
Oh.
That was that. So what the staff had done there was there's still debt on the Northern Community Center, right? So we're paying that debt off at roughly $650,000 a year, and they said pay that for 4 years. In the fourth year, the payment would only be $100,000 and change, so there'd be $500,000 plus there, and that was what they were going to apply towards the asks of tonight. So we took that $500,000 out, and we re-amortized that debt payment over the same 4-year period, but it was less debt per year, which is how we took the $130,000 out. So the $130,000 reduction you saw, what the staff referred to as a re-amortization, that was spending coming out of that money.
And one of the big catalysts for the low levy was the collapse of miscellaneous funds. All of these that were just
that was only $100,000.
Seemed like they were just sitting around.
There's a lot of miscellaneous funds.
Yeah.
So we collapsed a number of miscellaneous funds, and that totaled about $100,000, and we gave that back to the taxpayers.
So future plans, I guess, before the next budget would be to sort of review some things.
Yeah, I'm interested in looking at our budgeting process. I mean, it's the end of May. It's May 21st today. And council really got its
21st.
April
20th.
April 20th, yeah. So we're in April. So it's the end of April. And council largely got its budget package last week. So we're, a quarter into the year here. And then we have this information for a little less than a week, and then we have to make these decisions. So yeah, I think it's worth looking at the process. And if we're going to consider spending and spending reviews, we have to do that this year so that we inform the next budget in advance of the year.
So this would include the various, I would say, agencies.
Absolutely, yeah.
That are dependent, and they come to council a lot of the time.
Absolutely. So I wasn't agreeable to, with a quarter into the year, right, 4 months into the year, saying to outside agencies, your budgets are cut. People work at those agencies. They plan. And, they plan to spend money throughout the year. So if we're going to have some kind of effect there, or decrease it in some way, or increase it in some way, we should do that in advance of the fiscal year.
What about the request for the EDC to $400,000 instead of $500,000? Would that have made any?
Well,
not on the levy, but on their operations.
Well, it's just again, it's $100,000, the same as collapsing those miscellaneous funds is. Right. These aren't significant sums that we're dealing with as far as the levy is concerned. The levy is $100 million plus, right? So I mean, you're just tinkering at the edges with $100,000. The concern with reducing the EDF by $100,000 is that's a structural hole if you don't do it again next year, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't necessary in the circumstances because we got to 1.89, as you're aware, without that.
Councillor Butland said the city is in good shape. Where do you, I know it's hard to say, being the next budget being a year away, but where do you see Sault Ste. Marie next year?
Well, look, there's some things that I'm concerned about. I would agree with the proposition that the city's been properly managed, and I don't get too fussed about comparisons to other cities. The reality is that I do think it's a fact we have an age demographic. I do think it's a fact there are a lot of people that are on fixed incomes, and our spending as it goes up year to year, that's passed along to the taxpayer. So we have to be sensitive to that, and I indicated that during my comments. So the city's in very good shape with respect to its debt levels. We have very low debt levels. But we have to be sensitive to our ability to generate revenue, because as our demographic ages, right, we know that our death rate is outstripping our birth rate. As a result of that, our tax base shrinks. And when your tax base shrinks, you have you have less people sharing the same tax burden. So if you don't address those systemic problems, 10 years down the road, you can't paint that rosy picture. And I think that we have an obligation to look 10 years down the road and to make sure that we leave a healthy community for those people that come after us.